Hi, my name is Emily. I'm 24, and for as long as I can remember, I've lived under the weight of my mom's words, sometimes unspoken, sometimes cutting like knives. I've always tried to be perfect for her. Perfect grades, perfect manners, perfect smiles. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. You see, my mom wasn't the kind of woman to say, "I love you," when she should. She preferred criticism, sharp remarks, and reminders of how she believed I didn't measure up. And yet, I stayed. I stayed because I thought maybe, just maybe, if I was good enough, I'd earn her approval. It was her birthday that morning, and I had spent hours preparing. I baked her favorite chocolate cake with extra frosting, bought a delicate pearl necklace I had been saving up for months, and even decorated the living room with balloons and flowers. I wanted this day to be perfect, not for me, but for her. I wanted her to feel celebrated and appreciated. I wanted a hint of warmth in her eyes when she looked at me. The house smelled of vanilla and chocolate, mixed with the faint aroma of my mom's perfume. Friends and family started arriving, the chatter and laughter filling the rooms like music. For a moment, I allowed myself to relax. Maybe today would be different. Maybe today I wouldn't feel invisible. She came down the stairs, dressed in her usual crisp blouse and perfectly styled hair, a smile on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. She looked around at the decorations and the cake, nodded at the gifts I had carefully wrapped, and said a polite, "Thank you." That's when I noticed it, the coolness in her tone, the distance in her gaze. She wasn't thrilled, she was just tolerating. And then it happened. She said it, not as a joke, not as a passing comment, but as a statement that cut through me sharper than any words I'd heard before. "I wish I didn't have to see you every day." I froze. My hands trembled slightly as I set the cake on the table. For a moment, I didn't breathe. Everyone else laughed at something in the other room, completely unaware of the tiny earthquake that just shook my world. My heart raced, my stomach twisted, and an icy heat ran through my veins. I wanted to say something. I wanted to tell her how cruel it sounded, how every word she said to me over the years had piled up into a mountain of shame and hurt. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled, a soft, controlled smile, and said, "It's fine, Mom." That's what I always did. I took the blow and masked the pain. I swallowed my hurt like a pill, pressed my lips into a polite curve, and acted like everything was okay. Inside, though, something shifted, something awakened. The disappointment, the shame, the longing for her love, it all twisted into anger. Anger I had never allowed myself to feel fully, anger that now burned brighter than the fear of confrontation. The rest of the party went on. People laughed, sang happy birthday, and took pictures. I served the cake with a smile plastered on my face, my fingers trembling slightly as I cut each piece. I laughed when people made jokes, congratulated my mom on her age, and helped her open gifts. But my mind wasn't in the room. My mind was spinning, replaying her words over and over. "I wish I didn't have to see you every day." After the last guest left and the house grew quiet, I went up to my room. I closed the door, leaned against it, and let the tears fall I had been holding back all day. But underneath the sadness, underneath the hurt, I felt a spark, small, almost imperceptible, but there. A spark of determination. If she thought she could make me feel small, maybe it was time I showed her what I was capable of. And that's when it hit me. I was done trying to win her love. I wasn't going to beg or cry anymore. If she wanted to treat me like I didn't matter, she would feel the consequences of her words, and I would make sure she noticed. That night, alone in my room, I allowed myself to smile, not the polite smile she would see, but a quiet, almost sinister smile that whispered, "This isn't over, not by a long shot." That night, after the last flicker of birthday candles had died down, I sat on my bed with the glow of my phone screen illuminating my face. I couldn't stop replaying my mom's words. "I wish I didn't have to see you every day." It wasn't the first time she had hurt me like this. Looking back, I realized that every insult, every dismissive glance, every sigh of annoyance had been building up like cracks in ice. My childhood was full of moments where her words cut deeper than any punishment could. I remembered sitting at the dinner table, trying to explain a grade I had earned through hours of studying, only for her to wave her hand and say, "You call that good? Your brother could have done better." I remembered buying her thoughtful gifts for Christmas, only to have her open them with a forced smile and a faint shake of her head, as if my effort was never enough. And it wasn't just about gifts or grades. It was the small things she took for granted: my presence, my time, my care. I remembered countless nights I stayed up helping my siblings with homework, cleaning the house, or even covering for her mistakes, only for her to dismiss my efforts. I had spent years bending over backward, hopping for a shred of recognition, a flicker of appreciation. And what did I get in return? That cold, cutting remark she had thrown at me tonight like a dagger. As the memories came flooding back, anger began to rise inside me, sharp and unrelenting. I realized something crucial. I had been giving her power over me all my life, letting her words dictate how I felt, how I acted, how I valued myself. And now, sitting in the quiet of my room, I felt a flicker of clarity. I could no longer let her control me. I had to take back my power, not by pleading for love or approval, but by showing her that actions had consequences. For hours, I lay awake, thinking about what that could mean. I didn't want to be cruel. I wanted her to understand, finally, that I wasn't just some invisible shadow she could ignore or mock. I wanted her to see me, not the obedient child she had always expected, but the woman I had become, intelligent, observant, and capable of turning her own arrogance back on her. I began to recall every moment she had humiliated me. The time she invited my friends over to show them how responsible she was, while secretly criticizing everything I did in front of them. The time she had mocked my outfit for a school dance, calling it unworthy, while praising my brother for wearing a cheap suit. The time she bragged about my sacrifices, only to twist them into a joke at family gatherings. Each memory was a thread, and I realized that together, they wove a tapestry of control and cruelty that had defined my life for too long. But alongside the anger, there was a strange sense of empowerment. For the first time, I wasn't the victim. I was a strategist. I could plan, I could wait, and I could execute a subtle, precise kind of justice. I didn't need to yell or fight or confront her directly. I could let the consequences of her own arrogance and cruelty unfold naturally, and I would be ready to watch the results. By the early hours of the morning, a plan was already forming in my mind. It wasn't a rushed, impulsive plan fueled only by anger. It was careful, deliberate, and patient. I would watch her. I would learn her weaknesses, her secrets, her habits. I would find the moments where her pride and carelessness left her exposed, and I would act. Quietly, calmly, effectively. As I finally closed my eyes, a strange sense of peace settled over me. The fear and hurt I had carried for years didn't vanish, but they transformed into something sharper: determination. I knew this journey wouldn't be easy. Revenge, I realized, wasn't just about hurting someone else. It was about reclaiming my voice, my power, and my life. Tomorrow, I told myself, I would begin. The next morning, I woke up like nothing had happened. That was the strangest part. My mom's words from her birthday still echoed in my head like a song I couldn't turn off. But on the outside, I moved like normal. I made coffee. I cleaned the kitchen. I even smiled when she walked past me like I was just another piece of furniture in her house. Because that's what she wanted, right? A daughter she didn't have to see. Fine. I could do invisible better than anyone. That day, I started paying attention to my mom in a way I never had before, not as her daughter, not as someone desperate for her approval, but as someone studying a stranger. Like I was watching a character in a movie, trying to figure out what made her tick. And once I started noticing things, I couldn't stop. My mom had patterns, little habits she repeated without even realizing it. Every morning, she checked her phone the second she woke up. Not messages from family, not work emails. Social media first. Always. She cared about appearances more than anything. She wanted people to think she had a perfect life, a perfect home, a perfect family. But I lived here. I knew the truth. At around 10 a.m., she'd walk around the house with her phone pressed to her ear, talking to her friends like she was the main character in some glamorous story. She'd laugh loudly, throw in fake sympathy, and tell half-truths that made her sound like a saint. "She's lucky I let her stay with me," she said once, not even bothering to lower her voice. I was in the laundry room. I heard everything. My fingers clenched around a wet towel, my jaw tightening so hard it hurt. But I didn't storm out. I didn't cry. I didn't confront her. I just listened. And I stored it away. Because information was power. That evening, I sat at the dining table while she sorted through the mail. I pretended to scroll on my phone, but my eyes tracked every movement. She opened envelopes quickly, scanning them, then tossing them into piles. Some she kept. Some she shoved into a drawer without reading properly. That's when I noticed it. A bill with a red stamp on the corner. Final notice. She slipped it into the drawer like it was nothing. I stared at it like it had just spoken to me. My mom was always bragging about how responsible she was, how she handled everything, how she kept this family together. But right there, in her hands, was proof that her perfect image was built on shaky ground. A secret crack. And cracks could spread. Over the next few days, I started learning more, not by snooping through her private things, at least not yet, but just by being present and quiet. People always revealed themselves when they thought you weren't paying attention. She'd complain about money, then order expensive skincare online. She'd criticize other women for being messy, then leave dishes in the sink for me to wash like it was my job. She'd call me lazy, but she didn't even know how much I worked behind the scenes to keep this house from falling apart. And then there were her friends. My mom's little circle of women who met for brunch and book club and spent more time gossiping than actually reading anything. They loved her, not because she was kind, but because she was entertaining. She always had a story, always had a target. And that target was usually me. One afternoon, I walked into the living room to grab a glass of water, and I stopped when I heard her voice. "She's just sensitive," my mom said, laughing. "Emily takes everything personally. I'm just trying to toughen her up." The woman on speakerphone laughed back like it was funny. My throat burned. Sensitive. I wasn't sensitive. I was tired. Tired of being the family punching bag. Tired of swallowing every insult. Tired of being treated like I was a burden when I was the one keeping things together. But instead of storming away, I stayed just long enough to hear more. Because the more she talked, the more she revealed. She was worried about her reputation. She was worried about people finding out things. She was worried about looking bad. And suddenly, the revenge I wanted didn't feel like rage anymore. It felt like a plan. A calm one. A smart one. That night, I stood in front of my mirror brushing my hair, watching my own reflection like I was meeting myself for the first time. My eyes looked sharper than they used to. My face looked calmer. I didn't look like the girl who used to beg for love. I looked like someone who had finally woken up. I walked into the kitchen and saw my mom sitting at the table, scrolling through her phone again. She didn't even look up when I entered. "Mom," I said sweetly. She glanced up annoyed. "What?" I smiled. "Nothing, just hope you had a good day." She gave a stiff nod and went back to her screen. I walked away quietly, but inside, I felt something almost dangerous. Because now I knew. My mom wasn't untouchable. She wasn't perfect. She just wanted everyone to believe she was. And I was done helping her keep that lie alive. I went to bed that night with my heart steady, my mind clear, and one thought repeating like a promise. If she wanted me to feel invisible, I'd become invisible. And from the shadows, I'd make sure she finally saw me. I didn't rush it. That was the first rule I made for myself. If I wanted my mom to truly feel the consequences of how she treated me, I couldn't explode. I couldn't scream or cry or throw accusations like I used to. That would only give her what she wanted, proof that I was too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic. No. This time, I was going to be calm, quiet, precise. And the best part, she wouldn't even realize it was me until it was too late. A few days after her birthday, my mom hosted one of her little coffee afternoons. She called it a casual get-together, but I knew what it really was. A performance. She loved having people in the house so she could show off her spotless counters, her expensive candles, her perfect smile. She wanted everyone to see her as warm, generous, and flawless. But behind that smile, She was a storm. That afternoon, I wore simple clothes and stayed in the background like always. I moved around the kitchen refilling cups, offering cookies, doing the polite daughter act. My mom's friends barely looked at me, except when they needed something. It was perfect. No one pays attention to the girl who serves the coffee. And that's when I made my first move. It started when my mom began telling one of her stories. She leaned back on the couch like she was royalty and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm so responsible with money. I don't understand how some people let bills pile up. I could never live like that." A few women nodded, impressed. I froze in the kitchen doorway. My heart beat once, hard, because I remembered that red-stamped envelope. Final notice. I could almost hear it screaming from the drawer in the dining room. And for a second, I thought about walking away. But then I remembered her words. "I wish I didn't have to see you every day." So I smiled softly and stepped forward. "Oh, speaking of bills," I said, sweet and casual, like I was just being helpful. "Did you ever call the electric company back? The one that said final notice?" The room went silent. Not dramatic silence, worse. The kind of silence where you can hear someone swallow. My mom's head snapped toward me so fast I almost laughed. Her eyes widened, just slightly, and her lips parted like she couldn't believe I'd said it out loud. I kept my face innocent, calm, helpful. I even tilted my head, little like I was confused. One of her friends blinked. "Final notice." Another one laughed awkwardly. "Oh wow, that sounds serious." My mom's smile was still on her face, but it didn't look like a smile anymore. It looked like something she was forcing with her teeth clenched. "Oh, that," she said quickly, waving her hand. "It was a mistake. They send those sometimes. It's nothing." I nodded like I believed her. "Oh, okay. I just didn't want the lights to get shut off. That would be embarrassing." I didn't say it with venom. I said it like a concerned daughter. But I saw it. The crack. The tiny, perfect crack in her image. She laughed too loudly, too fast, trying to patch it up. Then she turned back to her friends and started talking about something else, but the mood had shifted. I could feel it in the air like static. People weren't as relaxed anymore. They kept glancing around, like they were suddenly aware that maybe my mom wasn't as perfect as she pretended. And the best part, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't insult her. I didn't accuse her. I simply spoke the truth. Later, when the women finally left, my mom didn't say a word at first. She walked them to the door with that stiff smile, thanked them for coming, and waved like she was still the queen of the house. But the moment the door clicked shut, she turned. Her face changed completely. Her eyes locked onto me, sharp and furious. "What the hell was that?" she hissed. I blinked at her slowly. "What?" "You know exactly what," she snapped, stepping closer. "Why would you bring that up in front of them?" I shrugged lightly, like it wasn't a big deal. "I didn't think it mattered. You always say you're responsible. I assumed you'd already handled it." Her nostrils flared. For a second, I thought she might slap me. The way her hands flexed at her sides, like she was holding herself back. But she didn't. Because she couldn't. Not without looking exactly like what she truly was. Instead, she leaned in close and said, in a low voice, "Don't embarrass me again." I stared at her, and something in me felt cold. Not scared. Not hurt. Cold. I smiled politely. "Of course, Mom, I'd never want to embarrass you." Then I walked away. Upstairs, I closed my bedroom door, leaned against it, and finally let out the breath I'd been holding. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Because I realized something huge. That tiny comment. That one small, innocent sentence. It worked. For the first time, my mom looked at me like I wasn't invisible. She looked at me like I was dangerous. And as I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling with a quiet smile on my lips, I knew this was only the beginning. Because if a final notice could shake her, Imagine what the next truth would do. After that coffee afternoon, my mom didn't treat me the same. Not nicer. Not kinder. Just different. Like she was suddenly aware I could bite back. She didn't say much for 2 days, but I noticed the little things. She stopped leaving bills on the counter where I could see them. She started taking her phone calls upstairs. And when she spoke to her friends, she lowered her voice, like she was afraid I'd overhear something else she didn't want exposed. It almost made me laugh. Almost. Because for years, I had lived like a ghost in this house. Quiet footsteps, quiet feelings, quiet pain. And now she was the one walking carefully. Still, I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. Because the truth was, that birthday comment wasn't just a cruel moment. It was the final proof that she didn't respect me. She didn't value me. She didn't even see me as a human being with feelings. She saw me as an inconvenience. And I wanted her to finally understand what it felt like to be the one standing in a room, smiling, while everyone looked at you differently. So I planned my next move. But this time, it wouldn't be about bills. It would be about what she loved more than anything. Her image. My mom had this obsession with being admired. She didn't just want friends, she wanted an audience. She wanted to be the woman everyone envied, the mother everyone praised, the strong one who kept everything together. And the fastest way to hurt someone like that, you don't attack them directly. You let people see behind the curtain. A few days later, my mom announced we were going to my Aunt Diane's house for a family dinner. It was one of those gatherings where everyone brought food, the kids ran around screaming, and the adults sat in a circle pretending they weren't judging each other. My mom loved those dinners because she could perform. She could laugh loudly, tell stories, and act like she was the most supportive, loving mother in the world. And I already knew what she would do. She would embarrass me. She always did. So I prepared. Before we left, I wore a simple black top, jeans, and a neat ponytail. Nothing flashy, nothing she could criticize too easily. I even helped her carry the casserole dish to the car. She glanced at me like she didn't trust my calmness. "You're being awfully helpful," she said. I smiled sweetly. "I'm just trying to make your life easier, Mom." Her lips tightened. At my aunt's house, the smell of baked chicken and garlic bread filled the air. Everyone greeted my mom like she was a celebrity. "Oh my gosh, you look amazing," my Aunt Diane said, hugging her. My mom laughed and adjusted her hair. "Stop, Diane, you're too much." Then she turned to me, her eyes scanning me like I was a stain she couldn't scrub out. "And Emily's here too," she added, like I was an afterthought. I smiled anyway. Because I wasn't here to beg for attention. I was here to let her ruin herself. Dinner started normally. Everyone talked about work, kids, rising prices, and neighborhood gossip. My mom jumped in like she owned the conversation. Then, like clockwork, she found her moment. "So," she said loudly, looking around the table with that fake concerned face, "Emily's still living at home." A few people nodded politely. My mom sighed dramatically. "I've tried everything, but you know how kids are these days, no motivation." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. There it was. The humiliation. The little public stab. My Aunt Diane looked uncomfortable. "Oh, well, it's tough out there." My mom waved her hand like she was doing charity work. "I'm just trying to help her become independent, but honestly, I wish she'd hurry up." She laughed. A few people gave small, awkward chuckles. I swallowed slowly. Then I turned my head and smiled, calm, soft, almost amused. "Oh, yeah," I said casually. "I'm grateful she lets me stay while I pay the mortgage portion and cover groceries." The table went quiet. My mom's fork froze. My cousin Jason blinked. "Wait, you pay part of the mortgage?" I nodded gently. "Yeah, I started helping when Mom said things were getting tight. Plus, I pay for the internet and groceries most weeks." My mom's face turned pale, then red. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out at first, like her brain was scrambling to decide which lie to use. My Aunt Diane frowned. I didn't know that. I shrugged lightly. It's fine, I don't mind. Family helps family, right? I said it so sweetly, so harmlessly, that no one could accuse me of being disrespectful. But I could see it in their eyes. They were doing the math. They were realizing my mom wasn't supporting me like she claimed. She was benefiting from me. Using me. My mom laughed suddenly, too loud. Oh, Emily exaggerates. She pays a little, but... It's not exaggerating, my cousin Jason said, sounding surprised. That's actually responsible. My mom's eyes snapped to him, sharp and warning. But the damage was done. People started looking at her differently, not with admiration, but with confusion, suspicion, like they were seeing her in a new light. And for the first time, my mom wasn't the star of the table anymore. She was the question mark. Later, when we got home, she didn't even take her shoes off properly. She slammed the door behind us and spun toward me like a tornado. What were you trying to do? She hissed. I tilted my head. What do you mean? You made me look bad, she snapped. I stared at her calmly. No, Mom, I told the truth. Her breathing was heavy, like she was trying not to explode. And then I realized something that made my stomach twist, not with fear, but with satisfaction. She wasn't angry because I lied. She was angry because I didn't. Because the truth made her look exactly like what she really was. I stepped closer, still calm. You said you wish you didn't have to see me every day. Her eyes flickered. I smiled, sweet as sugar. So I figured, maybe you'd prefer if people didn't see the real you every day either. Her face froze. And for the first time, she didn't have a comeback. The next morning, I woke up to an uneasy quiet in the house. My mom was still upstairs, packing, or so I could hear through the thin wooden floors. Usually, she'd be humming or flipping through her phone by now, oblivious to the world. But not today. Today, there was tension. The kind that makes you realize the storm has started. I went to the kitchen and found her standing by the counter, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the sink as if it had personally insulted her. She didn't look at me, didn't greet me, didn't even acknowledge my existence. And for a moment, I thought about leaving her alone. Let her stew. Let her unravel on her own. But something in me stirred. A quiet thrill, like the first whisper of wind before a hurricane. I had pushed the first pieces on the chessboard. Now it was time to see how she'd react when she realized the game had begun, and I wasn't going to back down. I poured a cup of coffee, keeping my voice light. Good morning, Mom. Her head snapped up, eyes narrowing. Morning, she replied curtly, no hint of warmth. I leaned against the counter. You okay? You seemed upset yesterday after dinner. Her lips pressed together. She turned sharply to face me, the tension coiling in her shoulders like a spring. Upset. Don't play games with me, Emily. I smiled softly, calm, innocent. I'm not playing games, Mom. I just noticed you were different, that's all. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed them on the counter. I could see it now, the facade she had built crumbling. For years, she had relied on her confidence, her charm, her words. And suddenly, all of that was shaky. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? She whispered, almost too low for me to hear. I tilted my head, letting a quiet laugh escape me, the kind of laugh that's too soft to be angry, too calm to be casual. Do what, Mom? You know what? She snapped, stepping closer. Her voice rose. You've been trying to make me look bad. At Diane's dinner, at the coffee thing, I know it's you, don't think I'm blind. I kept my expression neutral. My eyes were soft, unassuming. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. That wasn't my intention. Her hand trembled, reaching out like she wanted to grab me, but she stopped herself. Don't lie to me. You've been planning, haven't you? For weeks, maybe months. I nodded slowly. I guess you could say I've been paying attention. I just notice things that others don't. My voice was calm, steady, almost teasing. It helps me understand people better. Her face contorted, a mixture of rage, fear, and disbelief. You're, she struggled, searching for words. You're impossible. I stepped closer, closing the small distance between us. Impossible, I asked gently, or just done being invisible. Her breath caught. I could see the hesitation flicker in her eyes. She wanted to shout. She wanted to yell. She wanted to tell me I was ungrateful, unkind, unworthy. But she couldn't. Not without exposing herself completely. Not when everyone else had already seen cracks in her perfect image. I continued, my voice soft but firm. Mom, you've spent my whole life telling me I'm not enough, saying things you know hurt me, saying I'm lazy, unmotivated, or sensitive. And every time I smiled, I swallowed it, I acted like I didn't hear you. But I did. Her lips parted slightly. She didn't respond. I leaned in a little closer, my tone calm, almost intimate. And now, I just want you to understand something. Words matter. Actions matter. And for the first time, Mom, you're feeling a little of what I've felt for years. Her eyes flitted away, to the floor, to the window, to anywhere but mine. I could see it, the guilt, the shock, the panic. She was realizing she had underestimated me, that the quiet, obedient daughter she thought she controlled wasn't under her control anymore. She swallowed hard, voice cracking. Emily, I held up a finger, stopping her mid-sentence. Don't say it. You don't get to explain this. You don't get to try to fix it. Not yet. You just feel it. That's the point. Her shoulders sagged slightly, a defeated weight settling in them. She finally looked at me, the anger and disbelief mingling with something I hadn't seen in years. Fear. Not of me physically, but fear of losing the illusion she had spent her whole life maintaining. I smiled softly, the quiet, calm smile that masked everything underneath. It's okay, Mom, I said gently. You'll understand, eventually. She didn't reply. She just turned away and walked toward the stairs. I watched her go, feeling a mix of satisfaction and anticipation. The storm had begun, and I was ready to let it grow. Because this confrontation was only the beginning. It had been weeks since that confrontation, and my mom's unease was obvious. Every day, she walked on eggshells around me, whispering to friends, checking her phone nervously and avoiding my gaze. But it wasn't enough for me, not yet. I realized that if I wanted her to truly understand what it felt like to be powerless, I had to expose her in a way she couldn't fix. Not just in our home, but where it mattered most. Publicly, in front of people she cared about, in front of her perfect image. The opportunity came unexpectedly. My mom had organized a neighborhood fundraiser for the local library. She loved events like this. A crowd, applause, admiration, people noticing her generosity. She had been planning it for months, boasting to anyone who would listen about how organized and selfless she was. Perfect. I spent the days leading up to the event quietly observing her preparation. Every detail she shared, every little boast, every tiny exaggeration, everything could be used. I didn't need to lie. The truth was sharp enough. The morning of the fundraiser, I made sure to get there early. I helped carry tables, set up decorations, and even arranged refreshments. My mom glanced at me several times, suspicion flickering in her eyes, but I smiled softly, like an obedient daughter, invisible to everyone else. Then the moment arrived. She was giving her speech, standing at the podium, beaming like she was the star of the show. People clapped politely as she began talking about her dedication, her tireless work, her contributions to the community. She mentioned how she had organized the event, handled the finances, and made sure everything was perfect. Her friends nodded, impressed. Some whispered compliments. And then, almost casually, I spoke. Actually, Mom didn't do all the organizing herself, I said softly, enough for people nearby to hear. I didn't raise my voice, didn't make a scene. I simply let the truth slip naturally, like a comment in passing. Heads turned, her smile faltered. Excuse me, she asked, her voice tight. I continued, calm and collected. I helped with the planning, the setup, and the budget. I've been coordinating donations and organizing volunteers for weeks. I even handled some of the money tracking when things got busy. A few people gasped. Some whispered to each other. My mom's cheeks turned pink, then red. Her eyes darted around the crowd, trying to figure out how to regain control. She cleared her throat and stammered. Well, Emily did help a little, but it wasn't. I smiled softly and held up my hand. I just want everyone to know that the event is a team effort, not just one person. Everyone's contributions matter. Her jaw dropped slightly. She opened her mouth to argue, but the whispers had started. People were questioning her, realizing the truth, that maybe her perfection wasn't exactly what she had claimed. I stayed calm, polite, supportive. You did a great job organizing it, Mom, I added quietly, loud enough for a few neighbors to hear. But sometimes the people behind the scenes deserve credit too. Her hands trembled on the podium. She glanced around the crowd. Some of her friends avoided eye contact. Others looked confused. One neighbor whispered, "I didn't realize she did so much herself." And that was it. The facade she had spent years building was cracking in front of everyone she cared about. Her pride, her image, her carefully curated reputation, it all began to crumble. After the event, as people started leaving, she avoided looking at me. She muttered something about needing a break and retreated upstairs. I followed quietly, knowing the storm inside her had only just begun. That night, she didn't speak to me. She didn't ask questions. She didn't accuse. She just sat silently in her room, scrolling through her phone with a distracted, almost haunted expression. And I finally allowed myself to smile. Not because I enjoyed her discomfort, but because finally, she was seeing me. Not as a child, not as an inconvenience, not as someone invisible. She was seeing me as I truly was, capable, strong, and no longer under her control. And I realized something powerful. This was more than revenge. This was freedom. After that fundraiser, the house felt different. Not because my mom said anything, or because she apologized, or even because she looked at me with a hint of respect. She didn't. She still avoided my gaze, still whispered when she thought I wasn't listening, still carefully curated every interaction as if I were a ticking time bomb. But the difference was subtle, almost invisible, yet unmistakable. I was no longer invisible. For years, I had lived in the shadow of her approval, measuring my actions, my words, my very existence against her expectations. I had tiptoed through life, hoping that one day she would smile genuinely at me, that one day she would say, "I'm proud of you." She never did. And that was her choice. Now, months later, I realized something important. My power didn't come from revenge alone. It came from me finally seeing myself clearly. From realizing that my worth didn't depend on her validation. From understanding that for every insult, every cold word, every moment of neglect, I had survived, and I had grown stronger because of it. I still remember the exact moment it hit me. It was a quiet evening, the house almost empty. I was sitting in the living room, my laptop on my lap, scrolling through an article for work. My mom walked past, glanced at me, then paused. For the first time, she didn't say anything negative. She didn't criticize. She didn't even sigh. She just looked at me and walked away. And in that small, quiet moment, I realized I had won, not in some dramatic, vindictive way, not by humiliating her into tears, not by making her grovel or beg. I had won because she could no longer define me. She had spent years telling me I wasn't enough, but now the truth was simple. I had earned my space, my voice, my life, and she could no longer take it from me. The most surprising part, I didn't feel empty or cold. I didn't feel cruel. I felt free to live without fear of judgment, free to make decisions without worrying whether she approved, free to finally breathe in my own worth. Family life didn't magically become perfect. My mom still had her quirks, her sharp tongue, her stubborn ways. And yes, she still said things that stung. Old habits die slowly, but I didn't let them affect me the way they used to. I had learned something far more valuable than revenge. I had learned how to stand my ground. Sometimes, when I see her now, I catch a flicker of surprise in her eyes. A hint that she remembers that day at the fundraiser, or the coffee afternoon, or the way I calmly revealed truths she thought she controlled. And sometimes, she even hesitates before speaking, as if calculating whether her words will reach me. And I smile quietly to myself, because I know exactly who I am. I am Emily. I am no longer the invisible daughter, the quiet ghost in her house. I am someone who endured, observed, and finally claimed her life. I am someone who understands that power doesn't always come from shouting or striking. It can come from patience, intelligence, and the courage to simply be seen. Looking back, I realize that birthday, the one where she said she wished she didn't have to see me every day, wasn't just cruel. It was a turning point. It was the moment I finally saw her for who she really was, and more importantly, the moment I finally saw myself. And now, when I think about that day, I don't feel hurt anymore. I feel something stronger, a quiet, deep satisfaction, the kind that doesn't need to be announced. The kind that only comes from knowing that, for the first time in my life, I am untouchable. I've forgiven myself for staying so long in a house that didn't love me. I've forgiven myself for hoping she would change. And I've accepted the truth. I don't need her approval to be complete. Because in the end, the only person I needed to prove my worth to was me. And now, finally, I have. I smile softly, looking around the house, the air feeling lighter somehow. My mom is upstairs, probably brooding, probably reflecting on the small cracks she can't repair. And that's fine. She'll never see me the same way again. But I don't need her to. I am Emily, and I am free.